Hello everyone, and welcome to this IELTS listening practice test. This session is designed to provide you with a valuable practice opportunity. Remember, it's all about practice and refining your skills. So, let's dive into this practice test and sharpen those listening abilities. Welcome to this IELTS listening practice test. In this section, you will hear a conversation between a candidate and an interviewer. The candidate is applying for a position as a lifeguard. You will have some time to review the questions before we start. You can take notes while you listen. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 6.
Good afternoon. Could you please state your full name for the record?
Certainly. My name is John Edison.
Thank you, Mr. Edison. Next, please provide the address where we can contact.
Of course. My address is King's 2nd Avenue, 301.
And which position are you applying for?
I'm applying for the position of a lifeguard.
Can you give us a contact phone number?
Sure. My contact phone number is 5179-0274.
Thank you. Are you currently working part-time?
Yes, I have a part-time job at a local cafe.
And did you had any previous job experience related to this position?
Yes, I used to work as a swimming instructor at George Washington High School.
Narrator. Now, listen to questions 7 to 10.
That's great to know. Could you tell us about any additional work experience that might be relevant?
Of course. I've also worked as a camp counselor during the summers.
Now have a look at the questions 7 to 10.
Excellent. And do you have any specific skills or qualifications that are relevant to this role?
Yes, I hold a valid CPR certification, and I'm also trained in first aid.
When does your CPR certification expire?
My CPR certification is valid until July 2025.
Thank you. Now, can you let us know your preferred weekly shift?
I should attend my university in the morning, so I would prefer the evening shift from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Lastly, when would you be available to start working if selected?
I could start as early as 9th next month.
Finally, where did you come across the advertisement for this position?
I found out about this position through an advertisement on the university bulletin board.
Section 1 of the IELTS listening test is now completed. Now, before we move on to Section 2, take a moment to review your answers. Please go through your answers for questions 1 to 10. You'll have 30 seconds to do this. Welcome to Section 2 of the IELTS listening test. In this section, you will hear a speech about safety around campus. Before we start, you have 30 seconds to read questions 11 to 15.
Good evening, I'm Jeffrey Miller, from the University of Nottingham Student Union. And in this week's free class, Carlos Garcia is going to tell us about safety around campus. Over to you, Carlos.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And thank you for all of your attendance today. Also, I would like to thank the Student Union here at the university for organizing this lecture. Well, I have been serving and protecting the city of Nottingham for over 20 years now as a member of the police department. Does anyone know what type of crime is the most prevalent on campus? I heard someone say drugs and alcohol. That actually isn't too much of an issue. Violence? Nope. Actually, the biggest thing we worry about here is theft. The nature of crime on Nottingham's campus is quite different from that of the surrounding areas. Crime rates across the East Midlands are very difficult to control. We would like to see the rate stay the same for this calendar year, but it has been increasing steadily over the past 3 years. On campus, however, I'm happy to say that the overall crime rate has fallen this year. You wouldn't think so if you have seen the extremely exaggerated stories in the media. The media has done nothing but cause more concern about crime in our area. Even the crime shows you see today are a little bit far-fetched, but at least viewers know they are not real events. We would really like to see more factual news articles out there so the public can have a rational sense of the safety level of our society. Okay, let's move on to what to do when you see a crime. Do not get involved if at all possible, and do not draw too much attention to yourself by running away in a conspicuous manner. Though most likely, and hopefully, you will not have to experience this situation, if you are being mugged, please do not try to resist. Instead, be compliant and seek help after the incident.
Before we proceed to the next part of Section 2, you will have 30 seconds to read questions 16 to 20.
Like I said, though it is highly unlikely that you will find yourself amidst a crime, but it is important to be prepared should it ever happen. We find that educating students and staff on the correct precautions to take is the best way to increase your safety. Just remember to be smart when you're out late at night, and avoid any area or person that looks suspicious. I know it sounds obvious, but I cannot stress this enough. It is also not a bad idea to have your mobile phone with you at all times, but be careful. If you are chatting on your smartphone on your way home, you are a prime target for thieves. I'd like to see a show of hands. How many people have left work or the library after 10 p.m. to go home before? A lot of you, right? If you do have to go home late at night, please don't walk home alone. More often than not there is someone there that will be walking the same direction as you at some point. Walk home with a friend or coworker. Even if you must use your phone to call someone that is nearby to walk with you, it is always safer to walk home with someone. So when you're walking home, you may feel more comfortable with some sort of self-defense, such as pepper spray. Now, it's your call whether you want to carry something like this or not. However, I absolutely advise against carrying a knife or any other offensive weapon. All too often they can be used against you if you are disarmed, putting yourself in more danger. For all those interested, the Recreation Center offers a free self-defense class to all students every Thursday evening. While obviously an introductory self-defense class may not equip you to fight off villains like a regular superhero, it does come in handy sometimes. After taking a self-defense class, you will surely be more aware of possible dangers and how to deal with them. So hopefully now you have a more complete understanding of the nature of crimes committed on your campus, and how to avoid being a victim. I know most students at the University of Nottingham are not the criminal types, but remember that there is no barrier like a wall or something keeping non-students out. There is no army force securing the borders, and I doubt anyone wants it that way. The campus is generally a safe place, but it is not immune to small crimes once in a while. Alright, that's all I have to say for today. Stay safe.
Section 2 of the IELTS listening test has been completed. Now, before we move on to Section 3, take a moment to review your answers. Please go through your answers for questions 11 to 20 and make sure everything is clear and accurate. You'll have about 30 seconds to do this. Welcome to Section 3 of the IELTS listening test. In this section, you will hear a conversation between a tutor and a student discussing a research project. Before we begin, you will have 30 seconds to read questions 21 to 23.
Hi Bobby. Go ahead and sit down. Tell me about your research project.
Well, I decided to research football and keys for success on a football team.
That sounds great. What are the guidelines for the test? Did the teacher talk to you about it in class?
No, everything is on a handout that was passed out. It says that the first draft is due at the end of next week, and the second and third are due later on in the month. I don't understand why we have to keep revising and fixing it. Is this assignment really that important?
Well, this project is a major requirement for passing 11th grade English and will go on your permanent record.
Oh really? Does that mean it will affect what English level 1 am placed in next year?
You will have 30 seconds to read questions from 24 to 30.
Well, not exactly. You need a good grade to move on, but it is your overall grade and teacher recommendation that determines what level of English you are placed in next year. Anyway, tell me about your topic choice. Do you play football?
Well, actually it's because my father loves the sport. He watches it every weekend.
Cool. It's a good idea to report on something you're interested in. I see you worked hard calling players and the head coach to talk, so let's see what information you got.
Well, you have to listen carefully to the first call on the recording. It's really hard to hear because the background noise is louder than the person's voice.
Yes, it is a bit tough to discern. I'm afraid the player's answer is too short as well. You will have to interview him again and try to get him to give a better answer.
Okay, I thought that might happen. I will call him again tomorrow.
Moving on, let's look back at this question. You asked, tell me about a time when you learned a major life lesson through playing football and explain how that has shaped the person and player you have become now and how you hope to pass on that lesson. It is a great idea for a question, but in an oral interview it is far too complex. I would advise you to break it up into multiple parts to get a better response.
I guess you're right. I wouldn't want to have to provide an answer to a question like that. I will simplify it. I found that when I asked players this question, it took too much time because they were struggling to answer the question completely. In fact, this is the question Joe Billings was answering when the tape ran out.
He did tend to ramble on all the questions, didn't he?
He sure did.
I would recommend that when you go back and interview players again that you use a more sophisticated recording device. This recording is spotty, which indicates that the equipment wasn't working consistently.
Okay. I guess it probably wasn't the best idea to use the sound recorder on my phone. Hey, could you give me some feedback on the content of the report itself?
Sure. Let's start by focusing on your topic. While I like that you chose to cover football, it seems inexplicit. The keys for success of a player and team is quite an interesting topic, but what is your thesis? That is to say, what conclusions can you draw from your research? I would suggest coming up with a strong thesis statement and then shaping your report based on that.
Is it really too vague? I put a whole lot of facts into it. I list the top 10 goal scorers in football history, and later on provide statistics for a few of the most famous coaches and their records as coaches.
I think that's great that you included these facts, but I think you focused too much on the facts and not enough on connecting these facts to make your point.
Ah, I see. Okay. So it looks like I have quite a bit of work to do before the deadline.
Section 3 of the IELTS listening test has been completed. Now, before we move on to Section 4, take a moment to review your answers for questions 21 to 30. You'll have about 30 seconds to do this. Welcome to the final section of the IELTS listening test. In this section, you will hear a speech about the art of delivering a quality speech. Before we begin, remember that there won't be any breaks or pauses in the audio for questions 31 to 40. These questions will be based on the entire speech. Please listen attentively and answer these questions accurately.
Good morning. Today I am going to cover the daunting task of giving a quality speech, a thought that makes most of us cringe. In fact, 90% of all people feel nervous about public speaking, about 10% of whom are described as genuinely terrified. Hopefully when we are finished here today, you all will be in the 10% of the population who do not feel nervous at all. Did you know that lecturers tend to get more nervous if the speech they are giving is an important one? It makes sense, right? You probably wouldn't be nearly as nervous to address your residence hall about the proper use of the recycle and compost bins as you might be if you were asked to give the graduation speech to your entire 5,000 student class. So what is it that makes some people completely comfortable in front of crowds? Some people think that the ability to give a good speech is a gift that others are simply born with. This is almost never the case. Public speaking can be learned with practice. The first, most important thing you can do to improve your confidence in delivering a speech is to prepare a quality speech. Honestly, while the content of your speech is relatively important, the audience will really only remember the last sentence you say. It is a good idea to structure the rest of your speech to lead up to this last point to really drive your message home. This is a good way to ensure that your speech is well organized. Once you are confident in the quality of the speech you have written, the rest is just about your stage presence. Let's go through some do's and don'ts of public speaking. First, you want to command the attention of the room. Do not, I repeat, do not proceed with your speech until the audience is paying attention. Even Martin Luther King, Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech wouldn't have made any difference in the world without the undivided attention of his audience. To continue with the I Have a Dream example, one of the reasons that MLK was such an effective orator was his ability to speak with passion and engage with his audience. That sort of charisma does not come from reading straight from paper. Don't get me wrong, it is a good idea to write your main ideas down on a note card, sheet of paper, or something. But one factor that will consistently lead to a boring, forgettable speech is writing down your entire speech. Do not write your full speech down. If you are constantly reading your paper, you are not making eye contact with your audience, and thus failing to really express the feeling that goes with your ideas. I advise you write one or two ideas, so right if you suddenly draw a blank you have something to jog your memory. If you've written a good speech that you believe in, those ideas should be sufficient to keep you on track. Once you have those ideas written down, give your speech a few practice runs in front of the mirror, into your sound recorder on your phone, or with a friend before it comes time to address a crowd. That way you can hear how the ideas come across, make sure there are no abrupt transitions, and find out whether you're talking too fast or too slow. Timing is important. Make sure you time yourself beforehand to see how long your speech is. That is pretty much it. With practice you'll be able to deliver an expert speech that engages and even maybe inspires your audience. Just remember, speak with emotion. No one wants to listen to someone reading from a script. As I come to a close in my speech, I'll point out that I have employed all of these tips that I have covered. I practiced my speech ahead of time and timed it, and I can even show you my one small index card with just 3 simple bullets on it. It's as easy as that.
And that concludes section 4 of the IELTS listening test. Take a moment to review your notes and prepare to answer questions 31 to 40. For those taking the computer-based test, CBT, you will now have 2 minutes to review all your answers for sections 1, 2, 3, and 4. Please ensure that you have answered all the questions and that your responses are accurate. For those who have chosen the paper and pen format, you will have 10 minutes to carefully transfer your answers from the question paper to the answer sheet. Make sure to transfer your answers accurately to ensure your final score is reflective of your understanding. Please use this time wisely to double-check your responses and make any necessary adjustments. Your careful review will contribute to your overall performance. Now it's time to evaluate your answers and see how well you've done in this IELTS listening practice test. Before we move on to discussing the correct answers and band scores, take a moment to grab your answers and let's see how you've performed. Remember, this is a valuable opportunity to assess your skills and identify areas for improvement. Once you have your answers ready, let's dive into the answer key and see how you've fared. Take your time and cross-check your responses with the correct answers provided. Be honest with yourself and mark down the number of correct answers you've achieved. Whether you're aiming for a higher band score or looking to measure your current proficiency, this practice test is an excellent tool. Now, without further ado, let's move on to the correct answers and explore the band scores associated with different levels of performance. Are you ready? Please note that the correct answers are highlighted in red. If you've already marked your answers, compare them with the red ones to evaluate your performance. Job. If you've managed to get 39 to 40 correct answers, congratulations, you've reached the pinnacle of language proficiency with a band 9 score. Your comprehension skills are truly remarkable, and you're well on your way to mastering the IELTS listening test. If your count is between 35 and 38, that's a solid performance, placing you in the band 8 range. You're demonstrating a high level of understanding and accuracy in your listening skills. Now, if you've got 32 to 34 answers right, you're in the band 7 territory. This means you have a good grasp of the content and can understand complex ideas, even though there might be occasional errors or misunderstandings. Remember, this practice test isn't just about the score, but also about assessing your strengths and areas where you can improve. Each question you answer teaches you something new and helps you build your skills. Comment below your listening band score based on the number of correct answers you got. We'd love to hear how you did. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more IELTS related videos to help you on your journey to success. If you found this video helpful, please consider sharing it with others who might benefit from it. Thanks for watching.